everybody. Welcome. My name is Sandy, and my co-host is Haley. Hi, welcome. And we have two guests for WikiTree Week's kickoff day for Heirloom Hour. We've got Kay Knight, who I affectionately call Ms. Biocheck, and Emily, who I affectionately call an Appalachian. So, welcome to everybody, and welcome to those of you in the chat. If you have any questions along the way, please ask us. This is going to be a really fun hour where we talk about Kay's and Emily's heirlooms and how they relate to their genealogy that they have going on. And then at the very, very end, I'm going to share a few of my heirlooms that I did not necessarily inherit, but I did get by purchasing a house. And then I'm going to show you my very special guest that's joining us today. So if you're watching live, thank you. If you're watching after the fact, thank you. We appreciate you guys being here for WikiTree Week 2025. So very first, right off the bat, Emily, could you tell us a little bit about what you're going to show us today?
What I'm going to show you today is a quilt that was made by two of my grandmother's aunts, and probably some of the other women in the family helped. Hattie and Aunt Jenny, and it has the names of all of the descendants of John Fletcher Sharp and Harriet Vance Sharp up through March of 1934. So that's how I know it was finished. And that's John and Harriet. Harriet's a little bit older than him in that picture because he died young. So he was born in Blount County, Sevier County, Tennessee. It's an area that the family is in an area where the two counties get together. And his father died before he was a year old. And it was one of the families that went separate ways during the Civil War. The interesting thing is they got back together when my Uncle Jim went to college and roomed with a cousin.
Oh.
From the other side of the family. They found that out when he brought his friend home, and his friend said, "Wait a minute, why have you got pictures of my grandparents?" So that's when they reconnected in the 50s. Well, the aunts had probably stayed in connection with them.
Oh, wait a second. Let's just pause for a second. So the Civil War, 1860s, and then are you saying 1950s they reconnected?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I think some of the women stayed together, but communicated, but that was basically it. They didn't visit, as far as I know. John was captured and was at Camp Chase for a while. He was Confederate. His brother Boyd spent time at Andersonville as a captured Union soldier. So there was some pretty major issues between the two sides. And then John, after the war, instead of going home, he settled in Sullivan County and went to work for Samuel Vance at his farm and met Harriet. And she was Sam's oldest daughter, and they got married in 1866. And they had 7 children. John, one thing he told people was that he wasn't going to get killed by a gun because he'd made it through the war without a scratch. except he was killed by mishandling a muzzle loading gun.
Mm, mm.
um, so this picture is Harriet and her family in about 1904. The youngest child in my great grandfather's lap was born in August of 1903. So Harriet's in the middle, and to her right is Amanda, and behind her are her four children. That's my great grandfather, James, and Fletcher and Lester. And then standing next to him is my great grandmother. And then the others are in the background, besides my great grandmother, is Bob, and then Jenny and Hattie. And Jenny was only 3 months old when John was killed.
Wow.
So Harriet was left with 7 children under the age of 14.
Mm.
3 of them age 4 or younger when he died. Sam had to leave school and work the farm. He would have been about 10 years old. My great grandfather would have been about 9. And so it was, but so the quilt has all of their names, their spouses, and all of the grandchildren and great grandchildren on different squares.
And let me pause real quick for 2 seconds because I've got some insider information. So, if you see the background that Emily has, this is her ancestors' background. This is so as we start looking at these pictures in the quilt, I wanted you guys to kind of connect her background of South, it's Southern Appalachia, and it's more East Tennessee,
Yeah,
correct?
Northeast Tennessee, right.
But in this
And
picture, this is a treasure to have this picture because, as you know, we've talked when the breadwinner of the family dies and leaves so many family and children together, getting things like a photo, it might be important, but it also is not priority when you've got mouths to feed in a farm. So this is a huge treasure. And it's important that we show this picture to you because the next picture I'm going to show is the quilt. I've dropped the link in the chat. I'll do it one more time. And Emily, I think now's a good time to go straight to the quilt.
sure.
I mean, I am blown away by this quilt. I am totally blown away. Emily has this fantastic space page. And the thing I want to mention, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Emily, is if you have a treasure like this, especially with all these names, put it on a space page on WikiTree with the picture and link the profiles to them. And then that way people can get more involved and more interested. But can you imagine, Emily, 100 years from now, somebody coming to WikiTree and seeing this? We're,
Right.
we're
Yeah.
impressed now. But after you put all this work into connecting and telling us the stories, um, it's just going to blow our descendants' minds when they see this.
Yeah, and actually there's one mystery on the quilt. One of the squares is Mr. and Mrs. Fletcher Sharp and 2 little sons. Well, George Sharp was born in March 1934, but my aunt doesn't know of any other boys they had. So we don't know if George was a twin
Mm.
or if there was another child that just apparently they knew about when they made the quilt. But
Well, and a lot of times back in this time frame, if a family, the next farmer down, was sick and the husband and wife died and they had children, there wasn't a such thing as a formal adoption. They would
right.
just take in the kids. But take us back from the beginning. What is this quilt? Who did it? Who came up with this idea?
So what I believe is that my Aunt Jenny and Hattie made the quilt together, probably with help from some of their nieces, possibly my great grandmother. And what they have is all of what we can see here is I see S.T. Sharp, who was Uncle Sam, Mr. and Mrs. J.A. Sharp, my great grandparents. Next to them is Johnny and James, who were their two sons who died young. Also on the quilt is so all of everybody who was married is Mr. and Mrs. I realized that my Uncle Cleese and Uncle Lonnie weren't married yet, so they're by themselves. My mom is on there with her parents. Sometimes the kids have their own square, sometimes they're on the same square with their parents. And I remember this quilt was one that was used often at my grandmother's house, and it was on one of the beds in the guest rooms at my mom and aunt's house. And one of the times I was staying there, I mentioned to my aunt that it was one of my favorite quilts because it has all of the names and I could connect to it. And so one time when I was visiting, she announced that she had washed it and I was able to take it home.
Oh my. Well, you must have been speechless.
I was.
Isn't
So
that
we
first
went out. Yeah, we went out and I bought another rolling suitcase that was carry on.
Yes. Do not check this.
And um, because the flight from Tri Cities to Charlotte is a small plane, it had to be checked for that, but I wouldn't let it out of my sight otherwise. And I brought it home.
So
And
it's now in your possession.
yes, it's in my house. It's right now, it's on the bed in my guest room. And I decided that I wanted to mark mark everybody who's on there
Yeah.
and make sure I've got all their profiles. Um, Actually, my cousin Marianne Sharp, who is on this list with her brother Lester Jr., um, just just passed away,
Oh.
and her funeral was yesterday, streamed live, so I was able to watch it from the Atlanta area. And that's Mr. and Mrs. J.F. or John Fletcher Sharp. So they are the ones that started the whole family.
So we have a couple questions about this. So the fabric looks like feed sacks from that time period.
Very likely.
Okay.
Very likely it is.
And then the other question, are the names ink or embroidery?
They are embroidered.
And then also, are they their actual signatures or did somebody write it in?
That, I believe, is probably not their actual signatures. For instance, the one with my mother on it is Mr. and Mrs. Nathan Cox and Wilma Lee, and Wilma has two L's instead of just one.
One.
So
Now, I've got a really important question for you, because I think that all of us are going to come to a point, and as I told my husband, we're on the other side of this world now. When you hit a certain age, whatever age that is to you, I'm not going to tell you what it is to me, but when we hit that certain age, we start thinking about our treasures and our heirlooms and where do they go after us. So I think a lot of us think about this. We did have a WikiTree Day presentation 2 years ago where many people said donate them to a museum. Call the museum first. They might not take it after you're gone. They might not want it. But Emily, where does this quilt go? How does it stay protected? And Kay,
that's a
I'm warning you, I'm going to ask you the same thing.
um that's a excellent question. Um
It's tough. It's
it
really
is, yeah.
And so I put this out here because I would like everybody to think about this when you start looking at heirlooms, and if you start pushing them up on D2G, you never know. You might run into a cousin that you didn't know before, or, as Emily had, their two families after Civil War didn't talk. Maybe this is a way to come together and bond with an antique that you have. I have seen this happen with family Bibles. People are desperate for information that's only in family Bibles, and you'll see a page shared, and that's how families come together. And it's also how sometimes Bibles stay in the family or go to a historical society. But I really urge everybody to think about this, because I don't know, Emily, if you thought about this at the time when you were first saw it and you were looking at it, but the creators of this quilt were genealogists. We look
True.
at it at the beauty of it in the work and the quality, but it struck me as you sent me the pictures earlier today. They were genealogists.
Yeah. Well, my grandmother has a huge, or my aunt now, my aunt has a huge scrapbook put together by Aunt Jenny of newspaper clippings, anything about the family. And yeah, they were. They were single women, never married, but family was important to them.
I think that's really cool. And just to give a shout out to you as well for doing the space page. And this is an excellent thing to do on a space page. Sometimes we think space page is like a sandbox or for research
Mhm.
questions. A space page on WikiTree can be anything that you want it to be. It's something you create. I've seen pets. I love looking through the space pages of pets. I will tell you now. But I've seen pets. If you were part of or saw the space pages bingo that I did last year, many of you know Flo from Germany. He had letters written to home and back from ancestors who left his area of Germany, to come to Pennsylvania. There were over 100 letters. So what he did shocked me. I didn't know this at the time. He did 100 space pages that would
Wow.
transcribe those letters into, also German, keep the German and then the English as well, and connect them so they were all connected as family. And I instantly thought of his space pages when I saw your quilt, because that's exactly what you did. You connected the family
Mhm.
together, and then you provide these rich stories on the profiles.
Well, to me, this is the kind of thing that, like, why you should share this kind of thing. Nobody knows that these things exist until they see them.
They
And
don't.
so sharing them and putting them out there is really, I mean, the only way that other descendants are going to be able to know that these things even exist. So I think it's important to make these free space pages.
And I'm really a big fan of photos. I know that some people get really nervous about sharing some old family photos because they're afraid it's going to propagate through all the ancestry sites. But don't worry about that. Share them. Let people see who these people are. And I like this comment. I'm fortunate to have a bonus family. They came to me and they did some family history, and they gifted me a quilt very similar to this. I mean, to be gifted a quilt like this is just amazing. And Likewise, all the names of people I helped tie together to the past are on the quilt, which brings up, I'm going to bring this back up again, that Anne mentioned a modern heirloom. So I'm going to ask everybody in the chat and everybody that you see here on screen, what defines an heirloom to you? Another tough one. I would say something that comes to you, something that you personally treasure, whether it's family or not.
Yep, I think I agree with that. There's definitely a lot of things that I have that some people wouldn't consider to be heirlooms. They haven't been in the family for very long, or they're just not what you would expect. But I think that I hold value in them as an heirloom, and so that's what makes them one, I guess.
That's what I agree. I totally agree. And I will share that it's interesting that you mentioned that too, because my mom and I were at a big craft fair yesterday, and there was a booth selling antiques, and we both gravitated towards the same wine set. It's not ours, wasn't our family's, but we both wanted it, and if we had bought it, I guarantee you it would have been an heirloom from this point on. So as Haley said, it is something that means something to you. It touches you. Okay, so Emily, as we wrap up, is there anything we missed that you'd like to share before we move on to Kay?
Don't think so at the moment.
But if you have any questions, I've dropped the links to the space pages. Go to the space pages, go to her pages to see what is available, what's there. If you have any cousin bait, that would be cool as well to see the cousin bait. Maybe you're related somehow, and because as we said, there are two families that were separate. And then I just want to say thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing the photo that you have in your background that adds a special touch to your story. And I appreciate not everybody wanted to come on air that shared a picture or a story on G2G, because going live across the world, across scope, can be a little intimidating. So if you have a G2G photo you'd like to share on the Heirloom Week post, please do so. And if you have any brick walls associated with it, then maybe we can help. And the reason I bring this up is because of Kay. I have a feeling Kay's going to talk about a brick wall.
Yeah, pretty much. Shall I go to, or am I sharing my screen yet?
Not yet. I can bring it up. There you go. And if you want to switch to the profile.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to talk about the forks. My Aunt Marion was kind of like a grandmother to me. If you can see her picture, is my screen showing okay?
It is. It's showing well.
Aunt Marion is the tall one. She's the tall lady that's looking over the top of the refrigerator door. And this was at the Sands farm at Christmas time. You can see her younger sister is cutting the grapes in half and taking the seeds out. Aunt Marion never had any daughters. She had two nieces. And the Sands family didn't talk about their ancestors. They didn't like to have their picture taken, so there are not very many pictures. But Aunt Marion gave me some silver that had been in the family. Now where we're located here is up in central New York. If you look at New York State and you see that the Mohawk River goes east to west through the state, Syracuse is kind of in the middle. It's up in that area. And in that time there was, if you go back, there were no administrative records before like maybe 1890. And I had a lot of ancestors that settled there before there were churches established. So it was kind of interesting. So Aunt Marion was kind of like a grandmother, and she gave me some forks. She also took me with her on Decoration Day or Memorial Day. We'd go out in the backyard and we'd pick flowers and we'd take them up to the cemetery. Guy was her father. And so he was by this headstone that said Sands. But on the back side of the headstone, it said Whiting. So you might think because they had silver, they had money, they were farmers. You don't find them written about in any records. You'll find Guy's father because he was one of the first people he was one of the guys that helped establish this new cemetery that they're buried in. So Guy's father, George, is also buried here. And George and his wife, Jane, are buried here. I don't know if I have a picture or anything for George. If I go to George, same cemetery. I don't have his flat stone there. So anyway, Aunt Marion gave me the forks. And they're kind of neat. And obviously they were used. And if you look at the forks, there's 5 of them. So either my cousin Mary got 3 forks or 5 forks or 7 forks, figuring how many were in the set. And you can see people were right-handed and left-handed that used the forks, which is kind of interesting because Aunt Marion, born in 1902, was right-handed, but they made her left-handed, but they made her convert to right-handed.
Wow.
If you take the forks and you turn them over, I have evidence of Jane Whiting's last name at birth.
Wow.
On the back of those forks. But that's all I know about her. I know that she was my great-grandmother. I know where she's buried with this guy, George, who finding out more about him was kind of interesting. So what can we find out about Jane? Knowing her last name is Whiting, we don't know anything else about her family. So, and the
Remind
rest
me
of the,
again, what year was she born?
If we look at, I figured out around 1834.
And the reason I ask is because as we were talking before we came live, and as many of you know that do genealogy, finding, I'm talking about the United States right now, since this is where we're at, finding records on women in the 1700s and early 1800s is so tough. And Kay found this fork with the name.
Well, even
What?
George, even her husband, George, the first record that is found for him is his 1850 census. Well, fortunately, he was in 1855 census in New York. If you're ever researching in upstate New York or in New York and you find that 1855 census, it actually says how long people had lived in the town. So you can get a place of birth from that. I'm not going to go there now. Or you can go to every town has a historian in New York, and some of them have saved things like obituary clippings in their town folder. So we take Jane and we take these forks and we start trying to research. And if we search long enough, we're going to find this probate notice for this guy named Joel Cornish. And here's a space page. You find this probate notice and you find, here's Jane Sands. She's the only Sands in this whole notice, but there's a bunch of Whiting and there's a bunch of Cornish. And then there's some other names like Susan Stevenson and all these Crane people. So they're all in this probate notice. Well, it turns out Joel wasn't married. And if you start searching, these are Jane's siblings. first cousins, and second cousins. Now, this is going really wide on doing your research to figure all that out because you don't have a family Bible. You don't have church records. You might see that they're all buried near each other.
But this started because of a fork.
The Forks told me that that's her name. So now we can try and find Jane with somebody named Whiting. And we found a whole bunch of Whiting, but we also found Cornish. So we look a little bit further, and Joel never married. Neither did his sisters Rhoda and Charity. And so this space page that's got Joel in it, it's also got Rhoda and Charity with a lot of the same people. So you find that cousin or aunt or uncle who never married and named all these people in their estate. The other thing in New York that really helps you are land records. Well, there was this land record that Heman, Jared, and Francis and Susan went to court against Archimedes Stevenson and Susan, his wife, Mary Whiting, and Jane Whiting. Here's Jane. She's not married yet. She went to court. They couldn't decide how to divide 100 acres. It was 100 acres less a 24-foot wide lane. And if I go to that map, you'll see that here's the 24-foot wide lane. It's now called Whiting Road.
Huh.
If we go back to the cemetery, this is the new cemetery. This is Maple Grove Cemetery. Well, if you know this area, let's see this school that's right here. Well, Maple Grove Cemetery is there. And we'd go up to the cemetery, and we go across Whiting Road to this old abandoned cemetery with sunken in graves and stuff that was deeded by, had a bunch of sands in it, including Ephraim.
So it's a family farm cemetery, probably way back.
Well, there's other people there.
Yeah.
It's sometimes it's called the Mickelson Cemetery. It's called the Old Sand Cemetery. So there's several families there. It's kind of on a slope. The farm was there.
Well, can we pause for one second? I just want everybody to see. I mean, the amount of work you put on that space page for the probate was seriously impressive. Another way to use the space page. But you're talking about Whiting Road. You would have never gotten to this point, again, without that heirloom. And this wasn't an overnight find. I mean, Kay, I know, has put a tremendous amount of hours to get to this point. And you might have walked around this area and never known Jane was a Whiting in the city.
I learned to drive on these roads.
Wow. That's amazing. Okay.
So here's Whiting Road right here.
That gives me chills.
The Jordan Road. Here's the old Erie Canal. Everybody's heard of the Erie Canal celebrating its 200th anniversary right now. Here's the Erie Canal. My ancestors weren't ones when they widened the canal. Some farmers lost their land, but you can see I had sands down here, and then Timothy, I think, moved up here. Daniel and his son George moved over here. And we see Art Stevenson and his wife Susan. So they all lived near each other, near Jordan. Okay, actually the Methodist church that they went to was formed. Well, if we go back to Jane and we look at Jane's story, now we can look at Jane's story. We found all these clues. We can look at the story. So we find her. She must have been born about 1834 because of her age in the census. And she lived with her mother and sisters, her mother and her two sisters, and her brothers lived next door. Fortunately, she had a brother named Heman, not Herman, but Heman. And then they went to court over the land. Well, her father had died. They were working the farm, and they couldn't, I don't know if it was a way to hand money to each other or if they couldn't decide about what to do about the farm. But there you get her sister, Susan Stevenson, in. Now, if you go look at Susan, there you get your big breakthrough.
Wow.
Because when Susan, her sister, died, she was in, no, not Susan the mother, Susan the sister. Susan the sister died in Michigan. So she had a death certificate. And that named her parents.
Look who that name is.
And so the parents were Susan Cornish and Jared Whiting. So now my CC7 got huge because these guys go back. They go back to Pettibones and Cornish and Whiting and Whitten and Hanks and Hall.
And it all started with those fork.
So these are people that you find a lot of people that left New England. They left, well, these were all Connecticut people. In fact, they didn't live that far apart. But after the Revolutionary War, a number of people moved west to the wilderness that was New York. And so it was like around 1800, 1810, when people started to settle in this area. And it was a wilderness back then. Makes it hard to research.
It does.
But anyway, that was how Jane all came together from the forks.
Who's in possession of the forks?
I've got these 5. And her other great-granddaughter, my cousin Mary, has the other forks. Because
where did they go?
Marion had a son. He never married. I think he was too old for his time frame to have been allowed to marry a man, but he wouldn't have had kids anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So Mary and I are the only girls that Aunt Marion could give these things to. So Aunt Marion was one of 6 kids. I got 3 baby spoons. I'm guessing Mary's got the other 3, her father. And, I have my father and my aunt.
Now, is your cousin on WikiTree, and did she share those?
No.
Of the spoon or the forks? I mean, and then the question is, where do the forks go? And you might not have an answer. Who inherits?
Yeah, they go because my cousin's got my cousin and her brother both have kids, so the forks go there, obviously.
Now, and here's the thing that I want to mention too. Like, I can guarantee you what means heirloom to me. And as Haley,
I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Sandy.
What happened? As Haley mentioned earlier, what means something to you, Haley, might not to somebody else in the family. And I can guarantee you that what heirlooms I have, my son will either, trash them, Goodwill them, or whatever. So it gets a little scary at that point. But I look at Kay's forks and I'm like, okay, at least they're documented somewhere. So at least they're up there on a space page. Kay, can you hear me?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay, I feel like the commercial. Can you hear me?
But yeah, I did show you some space pages because I got the space page that I put all these Cornish people, Corning and Whiting, on one. I may have, this is my own space page because I do a lot of maps.
And you've got a compliment on your maps, and I have to agree that the annotations in your maps are fabulous. Thank you.
I have a degree in geography and a career doing mapping, so I ought to be able to do decent maps.
Okay, so next time anybody needs a map done, go to Kay. That should be something you
I end up. Pardon?
Create an app for that.
Yeah. Actually, this map is, if you notice, did I do it right? Did I do it correctly? Did I do it correctly? Yes. I actually cite the map in the text, in the biography. And if you look at the details of that map, the comments also show where it's from. For current day US stuff, you can get anything from the national map. It might take some messing around with it, and the URL might not be exactly what you want, but
this is important to also mention. We were talking beforehand. So where my family was located, it would be probably forks of different material. And where your family was located, and these maps really just kind of make it a visual. It's like eye candy for me to see where they were at. And then when you put that farm together where they were near each other, that just really connects and makes a profile stand out if you have cousin bait or brick walls or anything like that. And because of the forks, it started with a fork. This helped with the brick wall. And as Kay said, once she could figure out Jane and Jane's parents, that ended up increasing her CC7 because she just went ahead and ate through that brick wall. How you like that analogy?
Location. When I started doing the research, I found out from my father, George, and I look at his Sands ancestors and his Whiting ancestors down to my great-grandparents here, Burke, Stoner, Spinning, Woodworth. All of these people, all of those people settled within 20 miles of where I grew up.
Can you imagine?
Between 1810 and 1820.
And like you said, you drove those roads. You learned how to drive those roads, and these people were with you nearby all the time.
I found a couple. Ephraim deeded a cemetery. Woodworth was on a cemetery deed. Spinning was on a cemetery deed. So that's always very, very interesting to find.
Deep research here as well. This was not something that you just go and click and paste, cut and paste. This was deeper research that you did. I appreciate you sharing this and the forks, and I really appreciate you documenting it so well on WikiTree. This will live forever.
It's a clue or a hint about how it can lead you to see so much stuff.
It really can. And now I'm going to transition over real quick, and I'm not going to spend much time on myself, but most of you have known that we recently bought a property in let me come back here, in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Appalachia. And so when we talk about heirlooms, I have so many that are passed down, and I will tell you that my mom has 2 storage units that I won't tell you the size of, what's full of heirlooms. And it gets to a point of, how to give them to children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, things like that, which I would love to have. And she already knows what I would love to have. But we bought this home, and we're currently fixing it up. So if you see me on Discord, my tagline is always renovations continue. And this is where I inherited these heirlooms. And these heirlooms, I have no clue really truly what some of them are. But I went to ChatGPT. As most of us do, we assume that maybe ChatGPT is correct. And I posted up on social media the trunk that's going to pop up, and thinking that was a correct description of the trunk. I had 2 people from Germany come and tell me, I think you're incorrect. I don't think this was really a American-made trunk, but it could be. We don't know. And I just wanted to point this out real quick. These are things that I inherited. I did not buy these things when we got this house. This is what we bought. And this rocking chair is one of my favorites. This is a completely weird Dante style chair. It was really popular in Spain way back when. And it's actually looks like a torture device to sit in, but it's very comfortable. And the other thing that I mentioned, if you guys saw me on a roundup last month, we had to take down some walls. Some of the wood was bad. This is a 120-year-old bungalow. And when we took down the walls, I wrote on the walls everybody who had a deed on this property and gave them their WikiTree ID. And that kind of brings in this. Let me remove this, and this kind of brings in this. So the street is not called Holcomb Street, but at the time that this property was built in 1920, this gentleman, his father, actually moved in, and the home was really designed and built once Gordon got older, and the Holcombs took over pretty much this street, and it became known for them and the Apple Barn. So sometimes when you look at things, you don't know what they are. Like, I don't know where some of these antiques came from. That's another idea for a space page for Cousin Bait, and link to people that you know. This was fun for me because I actually went to the courthouse to look up deeds. They're not all online, and I was actually able to go to the courthouse and look up deeds. And come to find out, his great-granddaughter owns an apple orchard right around the corner. So I was able to go and talk to her. And the only way that I knew who she was is by another WikiTree that's online that created a bunch of profiles for Holcomb. So again, we talk about Cousin Bait, and I just want to give a shout out to Lydia, because Lydia is the one who created this profile for this guy. And that helped me find out, because she's like, go talk to this person 2 streets over. They can help you. And Cousin Bait is really awesome for space pages as well. Now, I did mention a special guest, and I would like to introduce you to my mother. And my mama is here. Hi, Mom. Can you hear me okay, Mom?
Yes.
Okay. And she has an heirloom that she gave me as a very young child. And as a young child, especially a girl, we tend to sometimes play, dress up, and things like that. And she gave me an heirloom that I never thought I would be talking about on air. And that would be her wedding dress that she has. And, now we preserve wedding dresses. Back then, we didn't really preserve them. So this hung from a very young age, like elementary school on, this hung in my closet. And it was a beautiful dress. This was a dress that she bought and married my dad in Walkersville, West Virginia in 1958. But Mom, let me give a little background. So you came from a very large family. You're the oldest of many children. And, your parents didn't really go out and buy the full wedding dress and the full wedding reception and things like that, because they were poor, right?
Right. Back then, you didn't have receptions like they do now.
And then when you were engaged and you had the wedding date, you were in a little small town. There was one dress store, and I say that loosely. It was just one store. And you knew that that's where you had to go. But how did you pick a dress from the store? Was it already made?
No, it had to be ordered from California at the store, at the specialty store. It had to be specially ordered. They didn't have any wedding dresses as such.
So did you pick through a bunch of different looks, or did you tell them what you would like?
I looked in a catalog and they had a few. They didn't have a lot because you didn't have big weddings back then. You didn't do wedding dresses like that.
And I think you paid for this, right?
Yes. Yes, paid $55 for it.
That was a lot of money back in 1958.
Yeah. $55 and the veil, I think, was $30.
And then, so you order it, and is it the same thing? It comes in, and then you try it on, and they tailor it to fit you?
No, there's no tailoring. You order it and it either fit or it didn't. It was like ordered from Sears.
Wait, this came from Sears?
No, it didn't come from Sears, but it was like ordered from Sears.
Oh, okay. And I will say that I still have this wedding dress in my closet, and I don't know. It's very fragile. It's crinkly, but for I know my mother, so my mother will not wear turtlenecks. She doesn't like anything around her neck. But I'm looking at this in the arms, and those arms look so tight with that lace. Was it comfortable?
Yeah, it was. It was a little bit big through the arm, so it was comfortable.
And the veil itself is no longer there. But let me show you what her wedding day picture looked like. And there you go. So that's her wedding day picture. So it was. I love that it was tea-ling. Did you pick that? Did you want a really, really long dress or just a short one?
No, I wanted the short one. I figured it out from the catalog that I ordered it from.
And then you can see the veil, and in the second picture, you can see the veil came down to a T length as well. And you are holding a Bible. So we're talking about genealogy. Whose Bible was that?
I'm not sure what that is.
Do you think it was your Bible or your mother's Bible?
It probably was one that was given to me by my aunt. Probably. She gave everyone a white Bible.
And this in your wedding was held at the family church?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Everyone showed up. There was no big dinners or anything, but everyone showed up.
And then afterwards, it was kind of bring a casserole dish, wasn't it, at the church?
No, there was no food. There
No
was
food?
only cake and punch. People didn't do food then at that time.
But you had a cake, right?
But what?
Did you have a wedding cake?
Yeah, we had wedding cake and punch.
And
And
punch.
everyone showed up, but they just brought gifts. They didn't come expecting a big meal.
Now, I look at the picture on the left, and it's kind of fascinating to me because I recently found out a story, and this is why I asked my mom to join. I recently found out a story from her that shocked me. So for those of you that are married, or those of you that are getting married, we've heard the term bridezilla and everything. So here's my mom. Her parents were not rich. They were farmers. They did not have a lot of money, and so she paid for her own wedding dress. She went to the store, picked it out, and paid for it. But Mom, you told me on the day of your wedding, you went to work.
I worked half of that. I worked as a cashier at a local grocery store, and I worked half of that.
And then you just went home, got dressed for the wedding, and showed up at the church?
Yeah, this wedding was at 7, and I worked till noon.
So I don't think we could call you Bridezilla. I think we're safe. I don't think you went overboard with that. But I can tell you there's a story here as well. So when she got married, she went and picked out her dress, and she picked the dress once. So when I got married, you had very special requirements that you wanted. You wanted a tremendously long veil for me and a tremendously long dress. So it's quite opposite than your dress.
Yeah. I just saw this one when I went to look in the book to order it. I just saw this one and realized it was shorter. So I liked it. And I wanted it.
Now, I know that your brothers and sisters were also in the wedding. Did you have to pay for their dresses too? And their suits?
I don't remember. I'm sure that Mom probably sewed them, made them herself.
And as we talk about this, I have these on her profile, and I think it's important to document the picture, but the story, right? We're talking about the story behind the heirloom. So the stories are what matters. So we've got Kay who broke down brick walls, and she lived in the area the entire time and was able to break down brick walls. And we have Emily who has 2 ancestors who never married and did this quilt. And can you imagine, they never had children? This information could have been lost unless they took the time to create this family tree on a quilt. And it's just kind of scary to think that these things would be gone and missing. And then I like Haley when she's like, things that matter to me might not somebody else, but you telling a story about why they matter to you. Maybe then somewhere down the line, somebody will say, yeah, I get that. I understand that. Otherwise, it was just an object or just a thing. And for me, for talking to my mom about this week coming up and her telling me that she worked that day, I had no clue that she worked half a day. I thought that, you spent all the day getting ready and doing all this stuff. But this is a beautiful picture, but the story behind it just makes it even more fascinating to me. So this was a good time. I will tell you that they did divorce, but this was a very pretty picture and a really, really beautiful dress. And this was a white dress. I know it's not now, right? Was this all white or was it off white?
It was all white.
It was all white. So, and a good lesson. If you have any articles of clothing, try and preserve them.
Any what?
Any articles of clothing that you have that are passed down. We have a lot of military uniforms and things like that. So try to preserve them. This sat in my closet since I was a little girl. I remember that this was important to you, and you gave it to me as the only girl, along with the photo album of the wedding. And I just keep thinking, Haley, of your comment. This would mean absolutely nothing to almost anybody, right? But to me.
Well, I think, like you mentioned, the stories just are what make them come alive, and it's kind of crazy how quickly one generation can lose a story. One person doesn't tell the story, and it's gone forever. So
It's gone.
that's why it's really important to tell them, is because nobody will know.
And then once we hear them, document them. Don't forget that step. And there's two different ways you can document. And I prefer both ways, to be honest with you, because you never know how Google is going to find these items. So if you document on the photo itself a little bit more information besides what I did, personal family photo, document a little bit more. Give the person's wedding location and date, for example, in this, and then also in the profile itself. And that will bring it together of what Haley just said. Don't lose that story. Don't lose the story. So I want to thank each of you for being here. Thank you, Haley, so much for being co-host as well. I appreciate the stories. If you guys are interested in sharing your stories, I highly, highly encourage you to do so. Who knows, maybe in the future we'll have more heirloom hours throughout WikiTree, not just WikiTree Week, because I've learned so much. I've learned from Kay maps and annotation and brick walls from objects. I've learned from Emily that even though somebody didn't marry and have descendants, their story still matters. So thank you all. And thanks, Mom, for joining. Bye, everybody.